Clay, after the events of Lifesigns, which is the episode that we're talking about today, I hope they spend an entire episode or 2 or 3 slowly massaging Chakotay's sense of self back into shape as to where it needs to be. I think this episode is basically the ultimate humiliation of Chakotay in a few vignettes of scenes where Tom Paris yells at him in the cafeteria and he's like, "You never loved me," and then he storms out and everyone's looking at Chakotay, who has to stand up awkwardly. And then eventually, after trying to go to mom to see what mom says, she says, "Talk to your father," and he talks to Chakotay. And then, as far as I can tell, Tom Paris lightly brushes against Chakotay, who reacts as if he's been thrown off of a bus that's moving at 60 miles an hour, hits the ground. Extremely embarrassing to pick yourself up like that. It's always embarrassing to be knocked down. It's more embarrassing to be knocked down when it looks like a light flag football contact has caused you to spiral out of control. But Chakotay, he's in a rough spot at the end of this.
Yeah, it also looked like they needed a stuntman to do that.
The fall,
and
not the ass of Chakotay that we're used to from Tattoo.
Well, I could be wrong, but it looked like someone wearing a wig.
No,
so I thought it might have been a stuntman, and I was like, man, for a stuntman, really could have done something a little bit more interesting than just like
fall over,
fall like a grandfather who missed the second slipper with their foot.
It's a trip. Get your toe caught on the underside of the deck porch as you're going up. It's that kind of a fall that happens to Chakotay.
I kind of hope that the long-term plan for this storyline is that this causes the focus now shifts to Chakotay, so he can kind of finally work out what the hell his deal is, because he is so kind of fence-sitting and passive a lot of the time.
Yeah, he's so
because otherwise I don't really know what's going on here, other than Tom Paris is just having a month or whatever. But it's very strange.
Tom, we'll get into this more. I'm just gonna say Tom Paris is clearly also a double agent, right? That's what's going on.
Oh, I hadn't even thought of that.
I think that must be it. And he's having a worse reaction to it than the other guy, whose name I don't know, is at this point. We'll see. We'll talk about it.
Wait, so you think Paris is feeding Seska information?
Yeah, I think he's a Kazon agent in some way or something like that. Yeah.
Like, is he like a double agent? So do you think like he's doing it like he's an Englishman working for the Russians who's actually working for the English, that kind of thing? Or,
no, I think it's
it's legit?
Yeah, I think he's exactly the same, because that's why he's reacting to it so badly, because he's not sure about what's going on. I'm assuming, because if that prediction doesn't come to pass, I have no idea what this plot line is about or where it's supposed to go. So we'll see. But
he's more reliable than fucking Mike.
Yeah, Mike. I'll look up his name as we go through. It is Michael, right? Hold on.
I found it very funny when
Michael Jonas.
When Seska was like, "You need to do what I asked you to do, Mike."
It's a good example.
Let me tell you, I am not going to raise my child on a Kazon ship, Mike.
in the Gamma Delta Quadrant. Always get confused. The time for finger pointing goes over, Steve. Lifesigns is the name of this episode. It's the 19th episode of the second season of Star Trek Voyager. It came out on February 26, 1996. It is 4 of 9 in the Seska arc. Written by Kenneth Biller, directed by Cliff Bole, in universe date 49504.3, which is 2372. In Lifesigns, the Doctor falls in love with a Vidiian patient whose life he saved. Meanwhile, Tom Paris's insubordination starts to go out of control.
You can tell because his hair gets frizzy.
Yeah, he's not. There's a lack of product and a lack of time put into himself in front of the mirror. So we had a special piece of guest mail for this one, actually.
Oh, Tom Paris himself wrote it.
Anthony Fauci of the NIAID fame and our coronavirus wrote in to give this a 1 out of 5, saying that there is no time to question whether or not living is appropriate when there's a dangerous phage living around you. So, thank you, Tony, for writing in and leaving your thoughts about that. But honestly, that was one of the more interesting things about this, watching this now, I thought, was that having just gone through the COVID pandemic, it's an episode that actually questions whether or not like life-saving things are the best thing to do in some ways. Like, and obviously, quarantine or whatever is one thing, but I think it's fairly unambiguous that the stuff like the lockdowns of like not letting family members see dying people in the hospital because of concerns about spreading what eventually turned out to be not that big of a deal was kind of called into question in this episode. So I thought that was interesting because there's a drastic awfulness to this disease, and it's still. It's almost like I wonder if the writers would have a different take after the pandemic, or if you still hold to this ideal when there was no pandemic at the time that it was written. You know, like whether or not something shapes you like that, or if you would hold to this opinion and think that the whole whatever we went through with COVID was like an overreaction or whatever. But what did you think about Lifesigns?
This might be my favorite episode of the season. Loved it. That was great.
It's a doctor episode. You like the doctor. You like 57 Chevys.
I like Mars.
You like you've been kind of lukewarm on the Vidiians, but the Vidiians make their little appearance here, and probably their best episode, I would think, right?
They should have
absolutely jettisoned the Kazon, I think, and gone with the Vidiians, who are much more interesting.
It's kind of a toss-up because I don't particularly care for that makeup design. It's just, I don't know.
When they're ill.
It just looks like a mess to me. And I mean, I understand what the concept is, but it just looks like Clayface mid-transformation. And it's not, I don't know. It's not, I don't find it appealing to look at, not that you're supposed to, but it just, as far as design goes.
Look like the Toxic Avenger.
Yeah. They look like a meal from RoboCop after he gets smashed into the toxic waste.
Yeah, I think they're interesting. They aren't as limited, it seems. Like there's a lot of different ways you can go with them. Like I thought their introduction was kind of neat. I thought that they get kind of like mustachy twirly villainy in the Faces one, which is the one where B'Elanna gets split into two there, where they become sort of like mad scientist types.
Right.
But I think that they have a core to their species or their culture or whatever that you can go in a lot of different directions with it, even though they're all afflicted by the same thing. And I think that this is a good example of a Vidiian who's not like an evil person, really, or someone who's not objectively trying to harm Voyager crew members, who gets a storyline out of it.
Well, yeah, I mean, the thing that they do that's nice is they have someone who is a doctor who is afflicted with this, fatal disease, who is still going out of their way to try and save other people, even though she knows that eventually she's going to get taken over by it. And she's still out there doing what she can, living her life kind of. And it's just, I think it's I think it's a great doctor story. I think it was all of the stuff. It shows how good Picardo is. Like he's really, really good in this. And the woman who plays the Vidiian is very good. And I think all that stuff was just really well done. I didn't feel like there was as far as that storyline goes, I didn't think there was a misstep through the whole episode. Like I loved the scene with him and Torres where he's trying to convince her to let him take a piece of her brain out.
Yep.
I loved the whole romance thing. I loved the scene where he tells her that he's in love with her was great. I thought the love story was just, for a character like him, it was just so perfectly written for that character. And it had a really interesting sci-fi base to it. Not only the idea that he has recreated this ideal version of her by using the hollow transmitter to create her non-infected form, but all the stuff that she goes through, seeing herself that way, and the way that she reacts, where she's trying to kill herself, like I just thought it was all really, really well done, and it was just a good story. And it, it's the point of the big confrontation at the end with the doctor and what the hell's her name? I can't remember her name.
Dinara,
where she reveals that she was gonna let herself die because she didn't want to live there, and the doctor having his the doctor giving the doctoral point of view, but also kind of being a little selfish to a certain extent.
Yep.
Was just really great. And even the ending, the final scene where where they dance in the thing, I thought was great. I just thought it was really well done.
Yeah, I liked I thought it's a good character episode for Voyager. The Doctor works well. It's a good romance episode for Star Trek, and Star Trek sometimes has trouble with that. And I think that the reasons that this one falters a little bit in the romance department is like the same reason that they all do, is that it's hard to do the whole thing in 43 minutes or whatever the time that they have.
It is, but I honestly didn't feel it.
I felt it at the end here. Like I feel the resolution of like, you have to sort of be paying a lot of attention to understand how this wraps up on itself, like where she goes and what happens to her and her decision that she makes. It feels like if they had another episode, you could more organically like let this stuff breathe and feel like the decisions are not like characters aren't coming to correct decisions without any contemplation, which is kind of weird about the ending. Like they have the problem, the Doctor talks it out, and then they just have their farewell scene after he's like, well, now you have to go back and save your people. It's a lot of information in a very short period of time, I think.
Yeah, that's true. But, at the same time, though, I think like the emotion of it is pretty clear.
It
like,
is, yeah.
I don't know what another couple scenes would really have added to it, because at that point that you've kind of had the big climactic dramatic scene. I don't really know what else you would really do with them.
I could flesh out the argument about whether or not you want to die or live in this holodeck thing for a little while longer. Like, I think that there's I think that they don't really touch on it too much.
It
there,
does. It is
what
a
the
bit
stakes
of
are.
Yeah, they do kind of tack it on a little bit at the end. But even so, I don't know. I don't really feel like it's underserved. It's tough because it's one of those things where it's like we run into this stuff all the time in Star Trek, where there's a really interesting idea that they kind of drop in that isn't the focus of the episode, but they end up using it as just like a plot maneuvering thing.
Yep.
And we always usually kind of feel like it's they're leaving money on the table, with that stuff. And I don't really know if I would want too much more of that.
See, because I was unclear about, and I think it's because of the pacing of that scene. I was unclear about what the trade-off was if she does not go back into the body, right? And I think my understanding is that the hologram will eventually fade away too, right? Is that what they say?
Yeah, basically, I think it's just, he was saying the reason that she had to basically go to sleep was because the longer that the hologram was on, the quicker her synaptic nerves or whatever were degrading.
Because she's sort of being beamed out of the body, right? She's like being projected from the body of herself through the computer. It's not a true hologram program or whatever.
It's like running running Wi-Fi in your laptop through a hotspot on your phone.
That's right. Tethering. When your phone, that's what the kids call it.
Yeah, when your phone runs out of battery, you're gonna not have Wi-Fi anymore.
So, I mean, this is all small potatoes. Why does he talk about they need so much storage for her?
I assume just because the consciousness takes up a lot of space.
But I thought the consciousness was being beamed from her. These are small points, but that was my confusion about, like, I was like, why does she die if she's a hologram in the ship? Like, why must she disappear if the body dies? Why does she go away too?
Well, the one question that I had was, why can't they just like upload her into the ship?
Right. Well, that's what I mean by the storage. Isn't that what the storage is for? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I guess the thing is, though, she's not an independently. She's not a program, right? She's a consciousness.
Yeah.
And so whatever she is doing in her holographic form is still happening because of her her fleshy brain.
Right.
And so when the fleshy brain goes away, then the hologram goes away.
Yes.
And I think it must be just that the amount of storage necessary to upload a whole sentient consciousness is just too massive or something. I don't know.
No, he says it's my program is the same size. The doctor has this point.
Well,
So
I have no idea then.
yeah, this is less of a like I'm like explain the details to me, but more it was leading to my confusion at the end where I was unsure if what she's doing is saying I would rather be a hologram for the rest of my existence than go back to that body, or is it just the insult of I don't want to be back in that body whatsoever at this point going on about my life?
No, it's I think it's pretty explicit that if her body dies, her hologram also dies.
Right. So I feel that central conflict could be fleshed out more a little bit, which is that the argument about whether or not what convincing her and making a good, like I think the doctor does it. I just think that it goes quickly. Is that you have to convince this character that she has to go back into her diseased body and help others. You know, the doctoring sort of side of things of like helping others and everything like that, which is all very good and fine. I just think that the conflict between the two of them is sort of like aggressively not focused around that because they have to spend a lot of time developing the relationship. And I think it's all good. Right. It's not that I think that these things are bad. I just wish that there was more of maybe it's just me. I personally found it a little bit unclear sort of as to how this was ending, even though it emotionally worked for me. And I thought that it was more important that it emotionally worked for me. I just thought that there was that central disagreement about whether or not she is, staying or going, or what is at stake because of her staying or going would be something to talk about for a little bit longer.
Yeah, I guess it's tough because you know, if you introduce that like earlier, that concept, then the story then becomes about the doctor having the point of the story becomes the doctor trying to convince her not to die, and I think that kind of takes away from the love story aspect of it. Yeah. I think you could. I think maybe you could spend a little bit longer on it if you looked at both sides of the equation from the. What the fuck is her name? Sorry,
Dinara.
Dinara. From the Dinara side, and also from the doctor side, as to like, you know, your program is adapting. You love this person, so are you telling her this based on what your program is telling you is the right thing to do, or are you doing this because you are compromised by emotion? You know, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But even so, I don't even know. I don't know how much more you get out of that, honestly. Maybe a couple scenes or something, but.
And I think it's interesting because the last one we watched was Death Wish, right? The suicide episode. It's so like, do you find these two episodes, especially back to back, to be contradictory to each other, or like schizophrenic in any way?
Give me a quick refresher on what Death Wish was about.
Because Death Wish was,
I mean, I get the title is probably pretty self-explanatory, but I forget who had the Death Wish.
The suicidal Q comes in, and they're like, okay, now you're a human, you have all these new experiences, and you can help a tremendous number of people with your Q knowledge and everything like that. And he goes, no, I'd rather kill myself, actually, thanks. Yeah. And this one, the exact opposite argument is made, and it feels better. Like, I feel like this is a better emotional episode, and I feel that this one is less cynical and more hopeful and like idealistic in a good way. Mm-hmm. It's just that neither one of them, I don't think, spent a tremendous amount of time on the nuts and bolts of it in some way, which is like. But I think that it works better in Lifesigns because it's more about the doctor getting a relationship. Like, that takes a bigger story lift than Death Wish does. Or
sure.
It like provides more entertainment for having to watch that and stuff like that. But I don't know.
Well, yeah, that's a case where Death Wish is wholly about that concept, the concept of euthanasia or killing yourself, and the literal argument between the two sides of it. And I think that one also gets undone because of, as we talked about, the way that they play the Q is incongruous to the decisions that he makes, kind of.
Yes.
Whereas I feel like in this one, ultimately, doesn't he kind of make the same argument to her a bit, where he's like, yeah, it'll suck because you got a weird face, but you can help people, and
right.
We can be. It's like I feel like it's not that schizophrenic, because I mean I don't know if the show needs to have a singular point of view on suicide. I think all the characters can have different ideas as far as that goes, but yeah, I don't know.
They can,
I feel
but
like
the show is yeah. Well, the show, in my opinion, the show is speaking out both sides of its mouth about that. Like within a back-to-back episode, where you would imagine that this would be something that would be commented on, because the argument here, it's to me, it's exactly opposite what they're saying in both of the two shows, but both episodes end saying that the right decision was made, despite the fact that they're contradictory to each other. So you can't have an episode where Q says, no, I don't actually want to help people. I want to just die. That's my decision, because I don't want to go back to whatever my life was before then. The prison of the comments, as opposed to the prison of this like disease that the Vidiians have.
Sure.
And the Vidiian episode is, no, actually going back and helping people is the right thing to do at great expense to myself. I help others. Mm-hmm. But both episodes end with the right decision was made here in this episode.
But I don't see why. Like, I guess it's a relative right, because I mean, if the doctor makes that, I mean, if you look at the way both episodes go, Janeway makes an appeal to the Q, and he's like, no, I don't think that's how I want to do it, and so he kills himself. Mm-hmm. And in this one, the doctor makes an appeal to Dinara, and she goes, yeah, you're right, maybe that is worth living for, and so she doesn't kill herself. So, and I mean, I think if you're going by what they are putting down in the last episode about the right to choose whether or not you live or you die or whatever, I think it's still in line, because she's still making the choice. She just changed her mind.
Sure, who's the better person, Dinara or the Q?
I don't know.
Dinara,
does one
clearly,
of them need,
right?
Yeah. Does one of them need to be better than the other? I would agree. Yes.
Because they're making a moral choice here about whether or not they help people. And
right.
The Q is not helping anybody. Dinara is helping somebody at the end of it. So it's like I think that's the core of the issue between the two. And I guess it all just comes back to my main point about it, is just that, like, how to describe it. So like the fact what's interesting to me is that despite how different the two episodes are, the way that they go about explaining the mindset of the person making the choice at the end is kind of underbaked in both of them, unfortunately. Mm-hmm. And I think that it suffers less in this one, because I like the scenes that are kind of like the comedy about giving a teddy bear and chocolates to an alien that doesn't know what the fuck is going on and stuff like that. Yes. And I like I'm sexually aroused by you while he's doing the operation on the brain, and she says, maybe we should talk about this later. I liked all that stuff, and I thought that it worked better. And I just feel that the character makes a choice that I would think is an appropriate good choice to make at the end, even if it's kind of underbaked as to how you get there. So that's it's tough, because I mean, I feel like that's the tough thing about the last episode, is when you're dealing with what essentially becomes assisted suicide. I don't know if anyone's ever going to come out of that feeling good about, even if that is the right choice, for that particular person. I don't think the person who is facilitating is ever going to come out and go like, you know what, great choice. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, it's. So I think the thing that undoes it in the last one, that I think actually works and makes me not mind it as much in this one, is that Dinara is consistently characterized.
Yes.
Like, they don't explicitly say it or really explicitly talk about it, but you get to see her see this other side and the possibilities of how she looks and how she's falling in love and everything. And so it does feel believable to me that she's like, you know what, this is better than going back to the weird body.
Yes.
But I can, at the same time though, I can totally understand maybe not making that decision immediately after one person says, hey, maybe don't do it. But that such is the nature of 1 hour television, I guess.
Yeah. And again, it's not that I don't think that they don't touch on it, but right. I think the conversation is so big that I wonder, it's almost like you need multiple scenes just to stress the fact that the characters have to consider what they're talking about here. Mm-hmm. If it all happen, if the convincing happens in one scene and there's not a scene where she storms out and is like, you're wrong, like I'm making the right decision, and then she reflects on it through some sort of like characterization, which she talks to Harry Kim or something, and comes to her senses. Then I would like that. Like I was enjoying this episode, and I was surprised when the end credits came up, because I was like, it feels like there needs to be more here at the end. And even though I like the ending scene, I really expected something else to, I don't know. It was like, what was it? We watched that DS9 episode recently for the patrons, Civil Defense, where Ducat is just kind of on the station at the end and you never really know.
Yeah.
It just kind of felt like that. It was like, what? It's over, I guess. Okay. I guess we're just going to see him. I felt that way about Dinara, that you don't really see her leave or anything like that.
Yeah, I mean, well, it was going to take them 2 weeks to get wherever they were going, I think.
Yes,
right?
yeah. But she is leaving, which is the...
Right.
Yeah.
Fuck, I was going to say something, but I forget what it is.
Sure. I can just go for a second because I have other thoughts about... I mean, Dinara, I like the... I thought this was a very strong romance subplot. I thought it had good Voyager humor in it. Like, Voyager continues to be kind of one of the funnier Star Trek shows, interestingly. I like the Doctor, when he meets up with Tom Paris, he's like, you have loads of experience with women rejecting you, right? In this sort of a very straight manner. Gets told that. I like Paris and him sort of working through these things. Even though it does kind of highlight to me the fact that Paris doesn't work the way that he's constructed, I don't think.
Well, he doesn't work at all, which is the problem with him.
It's extremely tardy. Lieutenant Tardy over here. Coming in late, and we'll wrap up with his stuff. But I think that he's the other humor stuff is, as we were talking about, just the operation, saying like, I'm attracted to you or you attracted to me, blah blah blah. I thought it worked well.
I had a real question about that scene. After she rejects him there, the next thing he does is he says he's going to inject something into her posterior sciatic nerve. Is he going to shove that thing up her ass?
It's a very long needle. Just ask Chakotay what's going on there.
I was very confused.
Sciatica never goes away, no matter what the timeline is or what quadrant of space you find yourself in. The Doctor did a nice move too, where he made sure to make sure that body came through before the clothes. The clothes come on last. Once you've seen everything, you can put some clothes on there.
Yeah. Also, what's his name? Schmoz?
It was like Schmuckface or something. It was the least sexy name a character. Let me see if I can find it.
Like, I was trying to figure out when they did the thing where she's like, "Can I give you a name?" I was like, "Oh wow, this is a great way to finally give him a name. Like, there's something that sticks around." But then she says, "I'm going to call you Schmoz," and I was like, maybe not that one.
Maybe we'll go back. I can't find it. It was a decidedly unsexy name. I'm not even sure how you spell it. But it was not a good name. What are you thinking of that runner with the name for the Doctor?
I like it. I think that's one of the more successful runners that they've got going, because I mean, Picardo is just such a good actor that anytime someone says, "What's your name?" you see this little glint of disappointment and distraction fall over his face before he's like, they didn't give me a name.
Oh, it's Shmullis. Dr. Shmullis.
Shmullis?
Yeah, Shmullis.
Shmullis. Okay.
It's good.
Still,
he had an uncle that was funny, and his name was Shmullis.
Yeah. Was he like a Catskills comic or something?
This weekend, it's Schmullis all week.
Ari Schmullis up at Camp Wakanaka.
We hold you in our hearts. I guess just to... So we liked that storyline. The patrons will give us some more things to talk about. The only other thing to really talk about is the thing that we talked about last episode, so we probably don't need to spend more than a couple minutes on it, is that Voyager's serialized plots are stupid. Like, astoundingly bad. It's Tom Paris and then Mike Jonas. Yeah, Mike Jonas.
The lost Jonas brother.
Mike Jonas is the worst storyline because it continues to not do anything. That guy doesn't leave that room. He doesn't do anything on the ship. There's no impact. Tom Paris is at least knocking people over.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure that there's someone out there who's like, well, actually, it's a more realistic espionage plot that all he's doing is giving what seems to be inane information to the people. It's like, yeah, we're on a TV show. Who gives a shit? You know,
Tasha Yar died like a real person, right? I mean,
right. Yeah. Even in this one, it's even funnier because like the Kazon is like, Mike, we finally would like you to do something, and he's like, no,
I need to talk to Seska.
I can't actually do anything. What is this? I thought we were just hanging out.
We don't even know that guy's motivations, do we?
I think, isn't it Maquis related where he thinks like
he just thinks
Starfleet shit is oppressive or something?
And he's just going to side with these lunatics? Like,
I guess.
Yeah, that's just shitty. But I don't know. Tom Paris is the other one. We talked a little bit about him at the start, but I don't know. He's a little irritated and he's a little testy and spicy with Chakotay. He seems to be the point of the storyline so far. I'm thinking double agent. I could easily be wrong. I don't know. But that's pretty much it. I at least find those scenes badly executed and badly conceived, but they're enjoyable to watch on like a sort of like this is awkward level. Also, like the only thing that makes me wonder about the he's a double agent is that they've been so specifically he's antagonized by Chakotay for no reason that I feel like he's read Chakotay's personal logs or something and knows something that happened, and they're going to reveal that in the next couple episodes. I don't know.
I mean, it might be possible that the whole thing is a work, and because I think Mike's reporting on it, right? He's telling Seska about
the stress between those two.
Yeah, he's telling the Kazon and Seska that there's shit going on. So the whole thing might be a work to get Paris.
To get a mole or something.
Yeah, something like that.
Oh man,
that is quite a long way to go for that ham sandwich.
Yeah, that is some dry ham by the time you get there. Maybe that could.
Ham's a little dry.
I if that were the case, I would think that I would hope that Mike Jonas would have at least talked about Chakotay in previous episodes or something, because Seska has an interest in Chakotay.
Yeah, that's the thing with this Mike thing is like even in this episode, I was kind of almost expecting them just to eject out of it and have Mike be like, "No, I can't. That's not something I can do. We're done here.
Right, just clicks it off and they never talk again." Yeah.
Right, but or the other thing I'm thinking of is like they have to. They're going to do a thing where it's like they knew about it the whole time or some shit, and so like I feel like maybe it's possible setting Paris up to have Mike come over and be like, we could, I've been talking to Seska, is
right. You're unhappy. I'm unhappy. Let's be unhappy together. And
right. Yeah. And do they throw Paris into the brig with Worm Tongue there?
Oh, with Lon Suter.
Yeah,
I would hope so. There's only the one brig. It's a small ship.
That's interesting.
I found the whole Janeway's like, talk to Chakotay. He handles the discipline on the ship. I feel like Janeway, I don't know. Maybe that makes sense in a chain of command structure, but that's like a weirdly flaccid scene where Janeway's just sitting there in her chair and she's like, you got to talk to him. He's the boss about time cards.
Yeah. It's weird though, because like that scene feels like it should be as bad for Chakotay as it is for Paris.
Right.
Like I feel like she should be saying that as an indictment to Chakotay. You know what I mean?
Right, or like, or in line with that, like they have an argument in front of her, and Chakotay is the one who knocks down Paris out of frustration or something. You know?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because that at least makes it seem like Chakotay is cracking a little bit because he was humiliated earlier. So you think that he should be. If he overreacts, it's kind of like they've been building towards that, and it's understandable, and maybe it catches them all off guard.
Remember what happened the last time someone crossed him and humiliated him? He walked right into the cafeteria and just socked him right in the mouth.
That's right. He didn't have Tom Paris's hair, though. I think that's intimidating. It's like a
5 knuckles right in the mush.
Forget about a ham sandwich. It's the knuckle sandwich being served over here, and it's a long way to go for one. Anything else here? I just saw Shay Sandrine popped up on my thing, but I don't think we really need to talk about it. That is a successful hologram program that Tom Paris has created because everyone wants a piece of Shay Sandrine.
You know, I had a question. I was thinking, like, so if that's running, and it seems to be running 24 hours a day, is that the only they've only got the one holodeck, right? You can't like do another program while that one's running.
Right, if they only have one. I don't know. It's a small ship.
It's like, is someone who wants to do like mountain climbing or something, they keep going over and be like, fucking Paris, man.
You just get out into the Paris hillsides. If you walk far enough, you'll just get there. Yeah.
Just jerk off in your bunk like the rest of us.
Come on, Tom. Yeah, Shay Sandrine. I find it charming. It's a good place to have these conversations, I think. It is, like, the logistics of it are just kind of strange. But I don't know. I think it could easily be much worse of a place to hang out and all the characters to talk to each other.
Yeah, I think I really do like that concept and that idea. Because, I mean, it really kind of takes the place to 10 forward, right?
Right, it does,
And it's an interesting new set, so it's not just the ship because they're not going to planets as much as some of the other shows do and stuff.
Just more comfortable. Like the conversations there feel a little bit more natural than they do. Like the cafeteria set on Voyager, I think is if I were to make a list of the worst sets in Star Trek, it's probably up there in like the top 5. It's super boring. It's super boring, and none of the conversations or scenes there have any kind of energy to them. So I don't know. Yeah,
it's they always start with someone just nursing a bowl of soup while looking at one of 5 tablets they have in front of them.
Yeah, well, they have to first insult Neelix by going, "Oh, Jesus, this again," and then they sit down and then they look at tablets, and that's every scene that happens there.
And they're always like, the person comes in and talks to the person, you know, with the tablet, and they're like, "What do you think you're doing?" And the guy just goes, "I'm sorry, what?" Like, that's
low energy Voyager. Yep. All right, well, I guess we're done with this one. We'll go to Patreon thoughts, and they'll probably give us something to wrap up with. So thanks, everybody, for listening. Patreon.com/The Pensky Files is the place to go to leave comments and support the show. If you support the show, you can leave a comment about upcoming episodes, and we read them and react to them. So there's a couple short ones here, Clay. I'll just read them quickly because they're so short. Taxel Bear says, Lifesigns, probably the best Phage People episode so far, and one that brings up something interesting. Maybe sometimes living in the Matrix, sort of, is preferable. That gets to my point. So, like, Taxel Bear isn't being clear there, but living in the Matrix doesn't mean that you die when the battery runs out immediately. You know what I mean? Like, the Matrix is life there.
Sure. I think he's just... I don't think it's a 1-to-1 because she will die.
Right, exactly. That's what I mean. So it's not exactly the Matrix. Like the decision here is whether or not going back into your body for a couple. It's whether or not the previous body was so bad that you're willing to die prematurely to avoid going back to that. Right. Mm-hmm. And I guess we've talked about that, but it's like that's the decision that Dinara has to make. And I'm trying to think on the fly about how I think about that. Like, it is a good conflict, and it makes sense. It's that Matrix question again. It's like it is preferable, but her sacrifice is bigger than just being in the Matrix, which is what you just said. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Eric McGowan says, Life Signs, it's a fine showcase for the character of the Doctor, but I've never been particularly interested in this episode, even if I can understand why many give it high ratings. 3 antique vehicles out of 5.
You know what my favorite thing about this episode is, actually? That it doesn't feature like a 3-minute spotlight on the Doctor tap sequence or some shit like they would do on TNG, where it's like, Brent Spiner's been telling everybody he can soft shoe for like 6 months.
Yep.
Can we just write it into the fucking show so he will just shut up?
There's no skill that Picardo brings from real life into the episode here. Where he's excellent at Parcheesi or something like that.
Right. Yeah. It's not like the guy comes over to her and she's like, may I have this next trombone solo? And she's like, what? He's like, my program doesn't let me play the trombone. But I've recently plugged in a new trombone program. Would you like to see me play the trombone? It's like, all right, Picardo.
He just starts speaking like Clippy. He's like, looks like you're trying to play the slide trombone. Would you like some tips about how to play the slide trombone?
You know, I've always thought it's really sexy if someone can juggle bowling pins. Well, I can't do that, but Robert Picardo can. So come back in about 10 minutes when I have a new program that lets me juggle bowling pins.
This is Kyle Barrett with Life Signs, the one I just sent to you.
Life Signs. I thought this episode was a breath of fresh air for the show, stripping everything back for a surprisingly funny, charming, and gentle romance. There's not much to it, but it's just nice and cozy and heartwarming. I'll stop listing adjectives now, but it really is one of my favorite romance episodes of the franchise and the best Doctor episode yet. It's also good to see B'Elanna have more fire in one scene than she did in the entire last 2 episodes dedicated to her. The 2 serialized plots also continue, putting the pieces in place for them both to come to a head next episode, but they are easily the weakest parts of the episode, 4 out of 5. That's actually a good point. I was kind of surprised that B'Elanna scene, she wasn't like, listen, I'm not building a robot body for anybody, and I'm not helping anybody kill themselves.
I thought it was a clever, subtle tie-in. Like, the reason that he goes to her is because of her experience in that Faces episode where her Klingon biology allowed that episode to happen, apparently.
Yeah.
It was decent. It was an easy, quick tie-in.
You know, another thing, too, that's interesting about that, you talk about the real-life applications of some of the things they talk about in this. The great thing about that scene is she's like, absolutely not. You are not touching anything in me to help any of these fucking guys. And then she walks in, Dinara walks in and she's like, hi, I'm Dinara, I'm a doctor and I would like to live. And B'Elanna's like, okay. Yeah,
it's the you catch more flies with honey than vinegar saying right there. It's just because the doctor is just like, listen, I'm going to strap you down, drill a hole in your head and cut out a piece of your brain. Yeah. And she comes in and she's like, I'd really like it if I could hold you down, drill a hole in your head and get some of your brain out. And B'Elanna says, I'll go change. I'll get ready for this.
Yeah.
Real Avi says, Life Signs, out of all the Star Trek shows, Voyager was the best at melodrama and romance. Loads of asks in this one, though. 4 awkward glances out of 5. Point extra G. I'll send this one to you. With this comment.
Life Signs. Taking uniquely science fiction scenarios to tell a tried and true story in a new way is really Trek at its best. This show is rarely bad when focusing on the Doctor, and everything about this, from the Doctor's early confusion and bluntness all the way to the end dancing scene at Cedrine's bar, is great. On a strange aside, I recalled when this originally aired that the song that played in the Chevy on their date was the Flamingos' I Only Have Eyes for You. I was surprised when later watching it on DVD to hear the Platters' My Prayer being there instead. I always assumed this to be some licensing issue. I was surprised to see the Flamingos return on the Paramount Plus stream on this watch. I'm curious which song people heard through the various places to watch. Did you hear I Only Have Eyes for You?
I don't remember.
Because I watched it on Paramount Plus, and that was definitely the one I heard.
Okay. No, I don't remember. I'm bad at that stuff, unfortunately. But I watched it on the Vudu, so I wonder if they were different.
I don't know how I would have felt if My Prayer was in there instead, because I can't. That's like pretty tightly linked to Twin Peaks at this point in my mind.
Yep.
So that would be interesting.
I want there to be a blooper reel where they just do the dance scene from Pulp Fiction. think that's
I think I know what I was going to say before. I'm actually surprised she lives in this. Like, I feel like I feel like.
Well, why? Yeah, why? Yeah, I guess you're going to explain that, but my question would be why.
Yeah, I guess it's. I was surprised that she was trying to kill herself, because it seemed like the natural ending to this was a tragic ending where the doctor finds love and then loses love because he just can't save her.
Right.
So I was surprised that it was, she's actually sabotaging her own life. And I'm happy. I prefer, and I'm happy that they didn't go the route where you actually watch her die, because it is such the appeal that the doctor makes is a positive one and a hopeful one. So it would be a real bummer to end it with her dying.
Yeah,
so I'm glad they didn't go that way.
It's a sort of it's a choice that they made, right? Because I feel there's a way that you could stress this more, where the doctor saves her in a way that is like more of a straight arrow and a straight shot of her as a plot arc, where they find her and the reason she's on that shuttle is that she's trying to die or something like that, but she's not. She's on a medical mission when they find her, right at the start. So I just wonder about like the strength of the doctor saving her. I feel could have been amplified if there was a very similar again to Death Wish. How I thought that the characterization was not really clear for the Q the whole way through there. If she had been more down in the dumps early, and it was less about her shock of being given this new body, which ties in, but there was more of a sense of like, the reason that I can't go back into that body is because you've only known me as a character who has been running from this body to get to the ultimate point of not being alive anymore at the beginning. I don't know. I think it was just an interesting choice that they avoided doing that with her early, to make her obviously someone who could be saved, which is what you're saying, is that it's surprising she doesn't die at the end, because that's more of the tragic storyline where a character's happy and then there's the death, where here it's more of a redemption story where there's a character who's very sad but then gets saved by the doctor at the end.
Yeah. I like it because, you know, it's still a tragedy, but it's a hopeful tragedy because she's still going to die. Yeah. Like he's only bought her a limited amount of time. And so I think that's
this is
what
the Picard android argument, isn't it?
Right, yeah. So she can die of natural causes.
She gets hit by a bus the next week. Yeah.
But no, I like that, and I like the ending, the kind of abruptness, if you will, of the ending, because it is, you know, it's leaving you with that high point where they are eventually going to separate, and she eventually is going to die. But for that moment, he has bought her some time enough for them to spend with each other until they have to go. She has to go away.
Yeah. Yep. Jaron Hatch says, Lifesigns, best episode of the show so far. Great use of the Vidiians, great use of the Doctor, and great use of romance in Star Trek. If this isn't a home run, then it's an RBI double with 0 outs. The cherry on top is the continuation of the epic Tom Paris is late again story arc. Talk about House of Dragons level intrigue. 4.5 out of 5.
That's the other thing about that fucking thing, is it's just like, much like the Mike plot line, nothing is really it's like slightly escalating episode to episode, but it's still ultimately just like Tom Paris is like a 15-year-old.
I was so confused when he comes in the opening and he's like, I'm sorry I'm late. I had to deliver the Wildman baby. I was like, wait, the baby's born?
Yeah.
I didn't even understand that he was... I don't know what the fuck he was doing. Why was he going through that charade? Just to embarrass Chakotay or something?
Was that a charade, or did he actually deliver the baby?
No, because the Kess later on says she had a prenatal visit with that woman. So the baby's not born yet.
Oh. Okay. Well,
that baby has to be born on camera, right? There's no way that
you would think so. Yeah.
Let me say.
Although I don't know, because sometimes if you need to get rid of a plot line or just move things forward, off screen is the best place to do it. Because I was watching She-Hulk, and one of the things that they do in She-Hulk, in one of the later episodes of She-Hulk, did you see Civil War?
The
Captain America
the
movie,
actual
Civil War.
Yes.
Yeah. Remember like the Sokovia Accords are the big like crux of that whole thing, right? Where
Right.
it's like after the Ultron stuff, the government's trying to crack down. In one line of dialogue, a total throwaway dialogue, Matt Murdock says the Sokovia while he's arguing something in court, he says since the Sokovia Accords have been repealed, and that's just it. Like they just took that huge crux like plot element from Civil War and just swept it under the rug in one line. It was amazing.
Yeah, the baby is not born until later.
Oh, okay.
So that baby.
What a weird thing to lie about.
Why is he lying about it?
It's a really easy one to check up on.
And well, that's the thing is that Chakotay knows he's lying right from the start, which makes you go, why bother? Then yeah, because Chakotay just says, Tom Paris, will you sit down? Like he clearly knows that he's telling a tall tale, and I related strongly to Harry Kim in that, where it's like two people clearly having a passive aggressive argument with each other, and they're using you as like the mechanism to sort of get at each other. And it's like, oh boy, poor Harry Kim. Let me see here. Changeling, I'll send this to you.
Maybe it's just my cold black heart, but I felt nothing during this episode. I didn't love it or hate it. It had some good performances and a few good jokes, but I think it was just missing something. Fan fiction rewrite. Instead of her dying after a few more days, make it a choice between living with the disease or staying with him as a hologram forever. And while it breaks his heart, the doctor tells her it is for the best that she goes back and that they'll always have Paris's holodeck programs. 3, 2 Jewish Hedley Lamar out of 5.
I don't get the reference. Who's Hedley Lamar?
That's a Blazing Saddles joke.
Oh, gotcha.
I don't know. Is that in reference to the name? Maybe I don't know what else that would be. In Blazing Saddles. Oh, shit, I can't remember the context of that joke.
Oh, it's Hetty. Is the actress? Who's Hetty Lamar?
Hetty Lamar is the actress. Hedley Lamar is the character from Blazing Saddles.
Yes, that's what's coming up here. Okay.
He says it's 1875. You could sue her.
Instead of her dying after a few more days, make it a choice between living. Yeah, I mean,
well, I don't like, but I don't like that because staying with him as a hologram. I don't know. That's not really that interesting of a choice because staying with him as a existing forever as a hologram. Yeah, that's what she wants, and he probably would say, "Okay, sure."
Yeah,
It's not like if she was like, okay, if whatever he does to her, like the piece of Torres's brain goes into her brain, and somehow that causes her to start creating antibodies that could be synthesized into some sort of cure for the phage, then yes. Then it becomes, okay, she's playing an absolutely crucial role to the survival of her species. She needs to go back. She can't just stay as a hologram forever.
Right.
But that's not the case. And so her just staying as a hologram is just kind of like, why not?
Yeah. I think that this is Changeling, I think, right? I think Changeling's point is kind of revolving or orbiting the same thing that I'm talking about and that concerns me about the ending, which is that it's a little confusing down to the fact of how she's drawn earlier about being suicide or non-suicidal and things like that to get to the ending and this thing where it's not really a choice that you think it's going to be about her staying there or going back. And I think it's mostly because the show doesn't stress the value that she is bringing by going back to her people and helping there. Like she's making the right choice. She's doing the right thing, but the episode is not particularly stressing that because it's so focused on the doctor relationship that you think that the doctor relationship is the thing that is like driving what the decision is going to be. but it's not. It's about her going back and being more helpful with the last bit of life that she has from this thing, as opposed to running from it, which is what that decision of staying on the holodeck is, which is that you're just kind of hiding from what you should do in that case. So I like the way that the show took it, and I think that that's the appropriate way to go. I think that I can kind of understand where Changeling's coming from, which is that it feels like the choice is something else because of the way that it's built up, but it's not. Yeah. And fanfic or not, it's not what happens. Latte Librarian says, Lifesigns, Dinara seeing,
well put.
seeing what she would look like healthy was surprisingly touching. This episode pairs well with Death Wish theme-wise, choosing to die versus choosing to live. 4 dance subroutines out of 5. Aaron Million is our next one. I will send it to you right now.
Lifesigns. Picardo is good as always here. When an episode focuses on him, it's generally a plus. Interesting juxtaposition with the previous episode, Death Wish. We go from someone wanting to die when there isn't anything wrong with them to someone who would like to live but cannot. On the B story, I am getting intrigued with where this is going, with Paris lashing out at Chakotay and being taken to the brig. Voyager has been slowly working this arc into episodes. 3 excuses for being late for work out of 5.
Yep.
Emphasis on slowly.
What do you have a go-to excuse when you're late?
Traffic, usually.
Yep. Mine's kids. It always works. Just use kids. It and 95% of the time it's true. So just say kids. Nick the Rat says, Lifesigns, I would really like to see Trek have an emotionless crew member and not try to force emotions on them. What's your opinion about when you have somewhere to be, when do you arrive generally?
Well, I guess it depends what it is. So usually if it's not like a social engagement, that if there's a between 2 times thing, I'm probably not getting there before the first time.
What about a doctor's appointment?
If it's not the first time that I've gone to the doctor and they're like, be here 15 minutes before so you can fill out all the paperwork.
Yeah, all the paperwork we emailed you and you filled out and sent back.
Yeah, I know.
5 times, and here's some paper to fill out too.
I usually get to the doctor like minutes before my appointment, like maybe 2 minutes, 5 minutes, 2 minutes before my appointment.
Gotcha. I'm a habitually early arriver.
Yeah.
I spend a lot of time just sitting and waiting for. I've been down to. I will sit in the car for 15 minutes because I can't go up to the place yet because it's like I can't just sit there.
Well, I always end up thinking. Well, first of all, it always. If I have to go to something like a doctor's appointment, which is usually kind of in the morning, I am such not a morning person that I always am like getting out of the house at the last minute possible.
Yeah.
Like I would rather chance getting stuck in traffic than wake up 15 minutes earlier than I did.
Yeah. I feel great embarrassment at being late for some reason. I don't know. Mm-hmm. I always try to get somewhere super early. I'm always super concerned about leaving on time and things to get there. I don't know. It's weird. I just and I find I feel like we've talked about it. I find habitual lateness to be insulting to me when people are habitually late to things.
Are you saying this specifically because we started late for like the 3rd episode in a row?
Oh, that's right. No, I mean because here I'm just sitting in my house, right? But if I'm it's usually like if you tell someone to come over for X time and then they show up like an hour late to it or something.
That's a lot. Yeah, no, that's
it really
cool.
Irritates me. Yeah. I find that. Yeah, I mean the being late to the doctor 5 minutes or whatever is not bad, but like once you start hitting like the 15-minute late thing, I start to sweat a little bit about like, oh God, I got to get there. Something's going to happen.
That's fair.
Did I send you Nick the Rat? Who did you just read? Aaron's. I'll read it.
Yeah, you did Nick the Rat.
I would really like to see Trek have an emotionless crew member and not try to force emotions on them. How can Dr. Schmuckass have emotions built in, but Data had to wait to become annoying? Isn't Chakotay like 2 times bigger than Paris? He felt like a sack of wet noodles from a little push. And I was waiting for Kim to jump over his console and yell, "You got knocked the fuck out." But sadly, no. The episode left me wondering what Dinara smells like. Probably better than Seska. I'd give this episode an okay shrug. Sure, out of 5.
I looked up the Blazing Saddles quote because it was driving me nuts. It's after Slim Pickens suggests that the way to get everybody out of the town is to kill the firstborn son of every household.
Yep.
And then Hedley Lamar goes, too Jewish. So I don't know what that has to do with anything, but
that's it's referencing the biblical plague of Egypt or something, right?
I guess.
Yeah. I don't know what that has to do with too Jewish. Was maybe the person's comment just confused? No. I don't know. We'll continue. We'll continue on.
Please explain. Show your work on this comment, please.
It's too layered. This is Artorias.
Lifesigns. Well, this is what happens when you get busy with military work. You miss some of the fun reviews. This is one of the best romance episodes in the Trek franchise. Compare this romance to Enterprise, and the differences are stark. Better writing, maybe? Picardo is the best actor in the show, in my opinion, and he nails everything he has put in. I love his honest self-aggrandizement. For a good part of this episode, I thought Dinara was going to die. I wish we would see her again. Probably not, though. On to the B-plot. It's obvious where this is going. Double Agent Paris. 4 romantic getaways out of 5. So, yeah, it looks like you...
Well, at least me and Artorias agree on where this is supposed to go. Yeah, I honestly don't know anything about this storyline. No one seems to talk about it, so it's probably underwhelming. There's a funny typo in Picardo's name there, which is like Porcardo, and I just kept thinking of like Peter Porker. Just if there's a pig version of Robert Picardo.
Like Steve Porcaro, the drummer from Toto?
Is it Steve?
No, it's not Steve.
It's
Jeff.
Steve? Jeff Porcaro.
Jeff Porcaro. Yeah, Porcaro, yeah. Steve Lukather is the guitar player.
The guitar player who, great hair. Great energy. Yeah, because Porcaro is the one that Spinal Tap is kind of the horrible gardening accident, right? Didn't Jeff Porcaro die in his garden?
Oh, did he?
I think he did. Let me see.
I do think he is dead, though.
He is dead. Jeff Porcaro. Death. Died at falling ill while spraying insecticide in his yard.
Yep. Oh, wow. What a way to go.
He ruled out an accident and determined a heart attack due to artery disease caused by a lot of cocaine. So he just happened to be in the garden.
Oh, so it wasn't it wasn't the spray, it was the blow.
It was a lot of blowback. Yeah, it was. He just happened to be spraying insecticide while he died of heart disease from cocaine use.
Like Vito Corleone.
Yeah, because that's the Spinal Tap joke is like an unfortunate gardening accident.
Bizarre gardening accident. Well, no, that couldn't be what it's based on, because that movie was from 1984, and yet he died in 1992. So it was prophetic. It was prophetic, if anything.
Maybe that's the way that I've got it. Brandon E. Howell says, Lifesigns. Yep, you guessed it. The doctor falls in love, complete with cliched high school dialogue. Not sure which is harder to take, the doctor's ego or his awkward pauses. Michael Jonas is still spying for Seska, and Tom Paris is still insubordinate who can punch the shit out of Chakotay far too easily. Avoid 157 Chevy out of 5. And the final comment is short. I'll read it. Matt Ross says, Lifesigns. I'm not too sure what to make of this Ansbury, it must be a typo, I can't make it out what it is, developing AI of the Doctor. The fact that holds are not alive or comes up every so often in the show. But this story kind of feels flat to me. Unlike the meat face of the Vidiian, the love story was blah, although ably acted. 3 diseases out of 5. Thanks, everybody, for leaving your thoughts about the episode called Lifesigns on patreon.com/the Pensky File. Pretty middlingly positive, I guess, would be the average, the way that I would describe the patrons. What are you going to give this one on a scale of 1 to 5?
5.
Oh, wow.
Yep.
Wow.
So going for it. It's my favorite episode of the season.
Yeah. Series 2, I would assume, potentially?
Yeah, kind of. I mean, it's really... as far as like showing it to someone, it's not like the first one on the list.
Yeah.
Because I feel like you got to, because it's not really, if I go by my own rules as far as like TOS goes. It's not like a this is closer to like a City on the Edge of Forever than Balance of Terror, and
Sure.
everyone knows my stance on between those two. Where like I think you'd need to see other stuff before you could really appreciate this one. But this is definitely in the first row of episodes I would recommend.
Okay. Yeah, I liked it too. My sorting is probably between whether or not it's a high 3 and a low 4. I think I'm going to give it a low 4 because I like. I thought I watched well. I enjoyed watching it. Amy watched it with me, and Amy came in and they were in the middle of some love scene, and she's like, "Oh, Star Trek always does romance so terrible." And by the end of it, when the credits rolled, she went, "Oh, that was kind of nice." So I think she came around, and I think it's an episode that I think it does work for other people. I'll give it a 4. I liked it. I don't know if it's my favorite of the season though. I think Death Wish is worse. But Death Wish is almost more interesting in some way because of the mistakes it makes. And I liked Meld and stuff like that. So, but it's up there. It's in the top 5 at this point. That's it. I'll give it a 4. Clay gives it a 5. It might be your first 5 that you've given to Voyager. Maybe not. I don't think so. Maybe you've given 1 or 2 others. That's it with Lifesigns. Thanks, everybody, for supporting the show. Thank you for listening. Thank you for supporting us at patreon.com/the Pensky File. Clay, do you have anything you want to say?
We're coming to the end of second string of Stephen King on Patreon with Amanda and myself. October, Children of the Corn. November is Pet Sematary. And December is Stephen King's It from 1990. So we're going to be putting up pretty soon the poll for what we're going to do next year, which I think is going to be a choice between reboots and remakes, video nasties, a curated list of video nasties, and holiday films. So like April Fool's Day or Leprechaun or I don't know, Arbor Day. Is there a horror movie about Arbor Day?
There's some C-rates horror movie called Arbor Day, I think.
Yeah, unfortunately. So one of the things that I was looking at was, it can get a little dicey depending on the holiday, and there's a movie called Uncle Sam, which is obviously a horror movie about July 4th. Sure. I've seen it. It's terrible.
Yep.
So I was going to suggest Brian De Palma's Blowout for that one, which takes place in and around the bicentennial, which that at least is a good movie, even though it's not exactly directly a July 4th movie. But
is Blowout the remake of the old French film?
It's like a... Yeah, it's like a spiritual remake where it's essentially the same setup, but the way it plays out, I think, is much different. It's been a long time since Blow Up is the original.
Right.
It's been a long time since I've seen Blow Up, but the essential setup is the same. Where in Blow Up, a guy takes a photograph and he finds, as he like zooms in, he finds a dead body or something, and then Blowout is. John Travolta is a film sound engineer, and while he's out recording like ambient noise, he catches the
that's right,
blowout of a tire in a car with a senator and a prostitute.
Yeah,
and as he shuffles through the audio, he gets into this Hitchcockian web of assassinations and stuff. It's pretty good. It's one of De Palma's better movies.
Blowout is also what happened to Jeff Becerra.
Yes, exactly.
So it all comes full circle. Thanks, everybody, for listening. We'll leave you with the soothing sounds of Rosanna. And it's a great groove. He was a tremendous drummer, but that's an iconic groove that literally everyone has to learn how to play. We start with Fool in the Rain, and then the Porcaro version is like the more sophisticated version of it.
Jeff Porcaro is like the backbone of yacht rock, basically, as a genre. Is Jeff Porcaro?
There's a there's a video series. He did a lot of instructional drum videos, and he has one that he explains how he comes up with grooves or whatever. And the thing that's most impressive to me is that I don't think he's playing with members of Toto. He's playing with like members of Studio, but
Studio
musicians. Studio would be a good studio musician band name. And he, maybe it's edited well, but I'm always blown away. He's like explaining the concept of what he's going to do. He's like, all right, I'm gonna switch the backbeat from 2 to 4. I'm just gonna put it on 4 every alternating bar. Here you go, guys. 2, 3, do, 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 and then they go into it. But the count off is so quick, and those guys are just like so on the money when they come into it. I'm just shocked at how much the attention they're paying. Anyway,
yeah, really good musicians are like magicians.
Yeah,
musicians, if you will.
Yeah, we'll studio on that, people. All right, guys. Thanks, everybody, for listening. Thank you for listening to Toto. And we will be back next episode with, I think it's Investigations. I'm going to go with that. Investigations is the next episode. See you then.